In this lecture, we will focus on Article 2, the executive branch. Half the length of Article 1, it clearly shows that the Founding Fathers wanted most power to reside with Congress. Because he represents the United States, the #1 superpower in the world, the President is a very powerful political figure. But in American politics, his power is limited compared to that of the legislative branch. The executive branch exists to enforce the laws of the legislative branch. The constitutional qualifications are but three: natural-born citizen, 35 years old, and a 14-year resident of the United States. John McCain, the 2008 presidential candidate, was born in the Canal Zone, Panama, but of American parents. And Ted Cruz, a 2016 presidential primary candidate, was born in Canada, but his mother was from Delaware. A president must be 35 years old, compared to a representative who must be 25 and a senator who must be 30. JFK was the youngest elected president, taking office at the age of 43. Donald Trump took office as the oldest at 70. And Joe Biden, if he's elected, will be 78 when he takes the oath of office. A president must also have lived in the country for 14 years, presumably to understand the affairs of the nation. Of course, the most controversial issue about presidential elections is the Electoral College. The president is not directly elected by the people. In the Constitution, the only directly elected officials were the House of Representatives. Senators were appointed by state caucuses until the 17th Amendment, and as we know, the Electoral College elects the president. The composition of the college is 538, made up of 435 representatives, 100 senators, and 3 electoral votes for Washington, D.C., given to them by the 22nd Amendment. Today, Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, is talking of making D.C. a state. So not only will it have 3 electoral votes, but will have 2 senators and 1 representative. Each state, regardless of how low the population is, must have at least 1 representative. These 2 senators would be Democratic because D.C. is a blue district, and this might give the Democrats control of the Senate. The political party's goal is one of staying in power. The candidate who gets the most popular vote in a state gets all the electoral votes, except in Maine and Nebraska, where the winner of the popular vote in each of its congressional districts gets 1 elector, and the statewide winner gets the remaining electors. Here we see an actual ballot with the presidential electors heading on top. It says electors for Trump, Pence, or Clinton, McCain. The other 3 third parties, working families, or conservative, being politically aligned with either Democratic or Republican parties, just choose the candidate of those parties to represent them. Also featured is a partial list of Clinton's electors. There are 29 in all, but I just took the top half of the list where the more recognizable names are. We see Governor Cuomo, we see Bill de Blasio, we see Carl Heastie, and of course #1 is Bill Clinton, her husband. The Constitution states that no sitting senator or representative may be a presidential elector. The electoral map 2016 is represented here. California has the most electors because it is the most populous state. Its 55 electors represent the 53 representatives and the 2 senators it has in Congress. New York is 29. 538 is the whole number, so 270 is the majority needed to win. When a candidate hits 270, he or she is president. All the electoral maps are available online, and it is interesting to compare them. If no candidate achieves the required 270, a plurality, that is the most votes, less than half, the House of Representatives picks the president from the top 3 candidates, with each state getting 1 vote. Because the Democrats currently control the House, a Democratic president would be elected. The Founding Fathers did not envisage political parties when drawing up the Constitution. The House picked the President in the 1800 election where Thomas Jefferson was elected, and the 1824 election when John Quincy Adams became President. So in the Constitution there are 5 steps to the election of a President. We already mentioned the qualifications, and the other 4 steps are Election Day, first Monday after the second Wednesday, January 6th, and the day of inauguration. The President is elected on the first Tuesday after the first Monday every 4 years, which is a leap year. 2020 is a leap year, so there will be an election this year. On the first Monday after the second Wednesday in December, the winning slate of electors go to their state capitals and cast their votes. These results are sent to the Senate. On January 6th at 1 p.m., Congress in a joint session counts the votes. Today, November 3rd, is the first Tuesday. In December, the first Monday after the second Wednesday is December 14th. And on January 6th, the President will be inaugurated on January 20th, which is a Wednesday. If the 20th falls on a Sunday, the President will be inaugurated on the 21st, the next Monday. Every presidential election, the Electoral College comes under scrutiny, and this scrutiny is heightened if the winner of the popular vote loses to the winner of the electoral vote, which happened in 2016. But it is important to get into the mindset of the Founding Fathers in 1787. It was a meeting of 12 really, individual states whose rights had to be recognized. Federalism divided the power between the states and a strong central government. The smaller states were concerned they would be dominated by the larger states, so compromise was reached, as in the Great Compromise. It was only natural then that the principle of the Great Compromise would be extended to the election of the President. More people means more electoral votes, but each state has a separate say in the election of the President. The other fear was the mob. Madison wrote of factions in the Federalist number 10. Populism is a term used to describe political figures outside the mainstream or those that challenge the establishment. In Federalist number 70, Hamilton fears the evolution of an emperor, as in ancient Rome, but sees the necessity of an energetic executive. The Electoral College would serve to stop the election of such an imperial figure. Today it is accepted that the people will not succumb to mob rule and will elect a sensible candidate like Donald Trump or Barack Obama. The two-party control of the system puts the choice of candidates in the hands of the political elite. Even Trump, with his own money, had to run in the Republican ballot to achieve success. The hold of the two parties on American politics is unbreakable. But with the Electoral College, there still is the chance of electors voting for someone other than who they pledged to. Indeed, in 2016, there were 7 faithless electors who did this. Currently, 32 states and the District of Columbia have laws in place to punish faithless electors, and the constitutionality of these laws was upheld by the Supreme Court of the United States this year in Chiafulda versus Washington. Going forward, we can expect further deterrence to faithless electors. The main argument against the Electoral College is that it's undemocratic. The winner of most of the votes should become president. As we see, there were 5 elections where the candidate who got the most popular votes lost the election. The last one being Clinton versus Trump in 2016. In 2000, Gore got more than Bush. 1888, Cleveland got more than Harrison. Tilden got more than Hayes in 1876, and Andrew Jackson got more than John Quincy Adams in 1824. but Adams, of course, became president. Nevertheless, the rules are set by the Constitution, and all presidential candidates know this, that it is the electoral vote that counts before the election cycle starts. Four amendments deal with the executive branch. The 12th Amendment has separate ballots with President and Vice President on each ballot. Because of the evolution of political parties and the way the Constitution was written, a president from one party and a vice president from another was elected. The 12th Amendment established separate ballots. If a candidate must get a majority of the electoral votes, and the House, if it goes there, picks from the top three, not the top five candidates. The 20th Amendment moved forward the inauguration date from March 4th to January 20th. This is called the lame duck amendment. A president who will be leaving office is known as a lame duck. This cut down on the lame duck period. It also deals with presidential succession, allowing Congress to pick a president, vice president, if both die before they are inaugurated. The 22nd Amendment limits the president to 2 terms and was passed following FDR's breaking the 2-term tradition set by George Washington. It is a limitation on the executive branch by the legislative branch. The president can serve 2 terms or 10 years if he succeeded a president who died with less than 2 years left on his term, or 7 years if he succeeded a president and served more than 2 years of his term. Then, if he served more than 2 years of the president's term, he can only run for re-election once. The 25th Amendment states that the vice president takes over from the president in case of death or disability. This president was set when John Tyler took over from William H. Harrison in 1841, but was never officially made a law. The 25th Amendment does this. The 25th Amendment can also be used to remove the president from office if he is unfit to perform his duties. The steps to do this are listed in the amendment. This was floated early in Trump's term as an attempt by the Democrats and the deep state to get rid of him. With Biden's ill health or senility a question mark, people have begun examining the 25th Amendment and, more important, his vice presidential pick. It is Congress that expands the executive branch and creates new cabinet departments, as spelled out in the elastic clause. It is also Congress that establishes oversight committees to question the executive branch on its actions. We saw this yesterday, July 2020, when the Attorney General Bill Barr was questioned by the House Judiciary Committee. So what are the powers of the executive branch? These are spelled out in Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution. The Chief Executive is Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. The President every year must give a State of the Union address, which takes place in January. The President issues pardons and reprieves. He makes treaties. He can call emergency sessions of Congress, and he makes sure that all the laws are faithfully executed. Executive privilege is where the President can refuse to answer questions based on the need for security. The courts have interpreted the Constitution as having this based on George Washington's presidency. So although executive privilege is not specifically spelled out, it is an inferred constitutional right of the executive branch. Hamilton in The Federalist spoke of the need for an energetic executive, and the many hats of the president expects and allows the chief executive to be energetic. As chief of state, the president goes to funerals, He attends festivities, greets and entertains foreign officials, and presents medal and other awards for national service. He also looks after the Easter egg roll on Easter Sunday in the garden of the White House, and this year Trump was expected to throw out the Yankee first pitch. As chief executive, he makes sure that the laws are faithfully executed. To do this, he uses executive orders sometimes, directives handed from the president without involvement by the legislative or judicial branch. Often executive orders are done because a compromise with the legislative branch can't be reached, so the existing law is enforced. The DACA legislation was part of this. Obama had introduced deferred action on the kids of illegal immigrants, but when this came to an end, Trump wanted to end it, but the Congress wanted to extend it, so there was an executive order to end it. However, this was blocked by the courts. Executive orders, Clinton issued 364, Bush 291, Obama 276. Also, the president is responsible for legislation or proposing legislation, and he has done so with regard to immigration and building a wall and other things with the economy. A couple of years ago, Trump made a huge tax cut that helped certain people. The password today is blue sky. I repeat, the password today is blue sky. Other hats of the president include Commander-in-Chief. Here the president has to be a civilian. The armed forces must be under the control of the people. So if the president is a member of the military, he has to run. He cannot be a member of the military. To run for president, you must resign your commission and become a civilian. The legislative branch has the power to declare war, but under the authorized use of military force passed on September 18, 2001, after 9/11, the president is empowered to use all unnecessary and appropriate force. The endless war on terror allows the United States to keep military forces in the Middle East. Under the War Powers Act of 1973, the president has to notify Congress within 48 hours of committing troops to action. It allows the country to go to war without declaring war and enables the huge war machine that exists in America. It is also under the hat of Commander-in-Chief that the president gets most of the executive privilege. He can refuse to answer questions based on national security grounds. The judiciary has interpreted the Constitution in this respect. As chief diplomat, it is the president and the executive branch that brokers peace with foreign leaders. Meetings with Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un have been at the forefront of, and President Xi of China have been at the forefront of Trump's foreign diplomacy. As party leader, he goes to rallies for other candidates, and Trump has been very successful in getting party members elected. The upswing in poll numbers is now referred to as the Trump bump. Finally, he is the #1 citizen in the country and leads by example. Giving COVID-19 press conferences and asking Americans to follow CDC guidelines is all part of his role as upstanding citizen. In the 1970s, Jimmy Carter went on television wearing a sweater to encourage people to turn down the heat and save energy during the energy crisis. The cabinet assists the president in his duties. Part of the unwritten constitution and started by George Washington, the 15 executive departments exist today. The last formed was the Department of Homeland Security. The head of each department is called a secretary. Cabinet members have expertise in the field to which they are appointed. They work closely with their departments to fill their duties and ensure that laws are enforced. There are other offices too that have a cabinet rank, like the White House Chief of Staff, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the United States Mission to the United Nations. These are independent agencies, and they're an important part of the executive branch. The cabinet meets in the cabinet room, which is beside the Oval Office. And Obama's cabinet used to meet on Wednesdays. Cabinet members are usually from the field of their department and are supporters of the president. The president gives jobs to fundraisers and supporters, particularly ambassadors. Woody Johnson, the owner of the Jets, is currently Trump's ambassador to England. The offices of the various departments are scattered around DC. Treasury building is at 1500 Pennsylvania Avenue. The State Department is at the Harry Truman building at 2201 Avenue C. Here you can see the government buildings in Washington, DC. Please do the following questions in the appropriate spot in the Google quiz. In this first pie graph question, the top question is number 1. Which of the following accurately describes the information presented in the pie chart? That is question number 1. And question number 2 is which of the following best explains the difference in the number of bureaucrats employed by the Department of Education and the Department of Homeland Security? That is question number 2. I will give you some seconds for each of the slides with the questions on them. If you need to pause the video, please do so and take your time. Please remember that you can watch the video twice if you don't understand the question or you don't know the answer. All the answers to these questions are in the video, and I appreciate the people who are doing these assignments. I understand how very difficult it is for you guys to work under these circumstances, but here you have at your fingertips a head start on any government course you will be doing. This concludes our lecture for today. I appreciate you listening and engaging. Thank you very much.